How does a man stop being ignored when his own family tells him to stay quiet and listen? At a dinner table, I was calmly reminded that real decisions were for adults, not for me. I nodded, stayed silent, and chose to let documents speak where my voice was never welcome. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The dining room at Brielle's house always smelled like expensive candles and ambition. Crystal glasses caught the overhead light just right, casting small rainbows across the white tablecloth. Everything in that room was designed to impress, from the imported chairs to the abstract art that probably cost more than my car. I sat at the far end of the table, fork in hand, listening to my sister-in-law orchestrate what she called an important family discussion. Brielle Torin had a particular way of taking up space. She didn't need to raise her voice. She simply spoke, and everyone else stopped. "We've been reviewing the portfolio," she said, gesturing with her wine glass toward her husband Adrian. "The returns have been exceptional this quarter." Adrian nodded from across the table. He was a man who understood numbers the way some people understood music. Silent, efficient, always calculating. He never disagreed with his wife in public, and I'd learned not to expect him to start now. My wife Leora sat beside me, cutting her salmon into perfect squares. She hadn't looked at me since we'd arrived. That wasn't unusual anymore. Somewhere in the last few years, she'd stopped being my partner and started being Brielle's younger sister first. "The trust restructuring went through last month," Brielle continued. She smiled at me then, the kind of smile you give a child who's been quiet during an adult conversation. "It's all very technical, but Adrian handled everything beautifully." I set down my fork. I wasn't aware we were restructuring anything. The table went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Well," Brielle said, her smile never faltering, "this is really an adult decision, Keaton. We needed to move quickly, and honestly, it's not something that requires input from everyone at the table." Leora's fork stopped moving. She still didn't look at me. Adrian cleared his throat softly, which was his version of agreement. The accountant, Finfeld, studied his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. No one spoke. No one defended me. No one even acknowledged that what had just happened was wrong. I nodded slowly. "I see." "I knew you'd understand," Brielle said, already turning back to Adrian. "Now, about the summer property." They kept talking. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream, something to navigate around but never address directly. I finished my meal in silence, measuring each bite, watching the way Brielle commanded the room without ever raising her voice. When we finally left that night, Leora climbed into the passenger seat and stared out the window. "You could have said something," she whispered. "Would it have mattered?" She didn't answer. Back home, I stood in our kitchen under the flat LED lights, replaying the sentence in my head. An adult decision, not for me. I was 39 years old, a licensed notary public, someone who verified identities and authenticated signatures for a living. My entire career was built on understanding legal documents, and yet my own family had decided I wasn't qualified to participate in decisions about family assets. I walked to my home office and pulled a fresh folder from the drawer. I labeled it carefully, dated it, and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Then I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about respect and how easily it disappears when no one bothers to defend it. My phone buzzed once, a message in the family group chat. "Brielle, thanks for a lovely evening, everyone. And Keaton, thanks for being so flexible about everything. We really appreciate your understanding." I stared at the screen until it went dark. The thing about being dismissed is that it happens gradually. You don't notice it at first because the insults are wrapped in compliments, the exclusions dressed up as efficiency, but eventually, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. I stayed awake that night, listening to Leora's breathing beside me, thinking about all the small moments that had led to this one. The family vacation planned without consulting me. The financial advisor who only ever called Adrian. The Christmas party where Brielle had introduced me as the one who handles paperwork, while Adrian got praised as our financial genius. I'd laughed along, kept quiet, maintained peace, and in doing so I'd taught them that my silence had no price. The weekend brunch had become a ritual I no longer enjoyed. Every Sunday, the same cafe with its exposed brick walls and overpriced eggs. The same table by the window. The same careful dance of pretending everything was fine. Brielle arrived first, as always, claiming the head of the table. Adrian followed, checking his phone, nodding at whatever message demanded his attention. Leora and I took our usual seats, and Finn showed up last, apologizing for traffic that didn't exist. "So, I've been thinking," Brielle announced before anyone ordered. "We should move forward with the property consolidation. Adrian's found an excellent opportunity, and we need to act fast." I set down my menu. "What property consolidation?" She waved her hand like she was swatting away something insignificant. "Oh, just some paperwork. Nothing you need to worry about. It's very technical." There it was again. Technical. The word she used whenever she wanted to remind me that my profession was somehow less important than Adrian's finance work. I was a notary. I spent my days authenticating documents, verifying identities, ensuring legal compliance. But to Brielle, that made me a clerk, not a professional. "I work with property documents every day," I said quietly. "Of course you do," she replied, smiling at the waiter who'd appeared. "But this is more about investment strategy. Adrian's the expert there." Adrian didn't look up from his phone. The pattern had been building for years, I realized. Small moments that seemed harmless in isolation, but formed a clear picture when viewed together. The time Brielle had introduced me at a party as Leora's husband, he does paperwork. The family vacation where all the planning happened in a separate chat, I wasn't added to until the day before departure. The Christmas when they'd given Adrian a Rolex and handed me a gift card with a post-it note stuck to it. I'd laughed it off, stayed quiet, kept the peace. Leora used to defend me back when we first got married. She'd pull Brielle aside and ask her to be more considerate. But somewhere along the way, that stopped. Now she just went silent whenever her sister started talking, like she'd learned it was easier to let Brielle win than to fight battles that never ended. "We'll need your signature, obviously," Brielle said, returning to the property discussion. "Just a formality. I'll send the papers over this week." "I'd like to review them first." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Keaton, it's going to be pages of legal terminology. Adrian's already had his lawyers go through everything. You don't need to waste your time. It's my signature. And we appreciate your cooperation." She turned to Leora. "Your husband is so wonderfully agreeable. You're lucky." Leora smiled weakly and reached for her coffee. The brunch continued in its predictable pattern. Brielle talked about their recent trip to Napa. Adrian mentioned a new investment opportunity. Finn offered professional observations that were carefully neutral. And I sat there nodding at appropriate intervals, watching my wife avoid my gaze. When we finally left, Leora waited until we were in the car before speaking. "You were quiet today." "I'm always quiet." "You know what I mean. Brielle was just trying to help." "Was she?" Leora sighed. "Why do you have to make everything difficult? She's family. They're looking out for us." "Are they looking out for us, or are they looking out for themselves?" She didn't answer that. She never did, when the question got too close to something she didn't want to examine. That night, I sat in my home office and opened the folder I'd started. I began documenting. Dates, conversations, decisions made without my knowledge. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew that silence had become a liability I could no longer afford. My phone buzzed, the family group chat again. "Brielle, Adrian and I have finalized the property timeline. Everything's in motion. Thanks for trusting us to handle the complicated stuff. I hadn't agreed to anything, but according to the chat, the decision had already been made, my cooperation assumed, my input irrelevant. I added a new page to the folder and kept writing. Later that week, I received an email from Adrian's office. Attached were 17 pages of legal documents related to the property consolidation Brielle had mentioned. The cover letter was brief. Please sign and return by Friday. Time-sensitive opportunity. I opened the documents and started reading. The terminology wasn't complicated. The structure was straightforward. And buried in Section 12 was a clause that would transfer controlling interest of certain family assets to a trust managed exclusively by Adrian. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Then, I picked up my phone and made a call I should have made months ago. The hotel lobby bar was too loud for the conversation Brielle wanted to have, but she'd chosen it anyway. She liked places where she could be seen, where her presence registered. I arrived 10 minutes early and took a seat at the corner table she'd reserved, watching business people drift past with their rolling luggage and tired expressions. She arrived precisely on time, trailing expensive perfume and confidence. "Keaton," she air-kissed near my cheek and settled into her chair. "I'm so glad you could meet. I wanted to talk about the family structure moving forward." Family structure? Yes. Adrian and I have been discussing how to streamline everything. Decision-making, financial planning, that sort of thing. We think it makes sense for us to handle the primary oversight, given our experience. I kept my expression neutral. Oversight of what exactly? Oh, the various accounts, the trust arrangements, property management. It's just easier if one couple handles it all. Fewer complications. She signaled the waiter. You understand, don't you? You and Leora can focus on your careers without all this administrative burden. My career involves administration. She smiled like I'd made a joke. Well, yes, but this is family finance. It's different, more complex. Adrian's been doing this for decades. I watched her order a cocktail, watched her settle into her chair like she owned the entire building, and I realized something I should have seen years ago. This wasn't about efficiency or expertise. This was about control. Brielle needed to be the one making decisions because being in charge was how she defined her worth, and I'd been making it easy for her. I'll need to see the documentation, I said. Of course. I'll have Adrian send everything over, though honestly it's quite dense, lots of legal terminology and financial projections. You might find it tedious. I'll manage. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Keaton, I'm trying to help. You're a lovely person, but let's be honest. This isn't your area. You authenticate signatures. This is investment strategy, tax optimization, estate planning. Let the experts handle it. The experts. Never mind that I spent 40 hours a week reviewing legal documents, verifying compliance, catching errors that could invalidate entire agreements. To Brielle, I was just someone who stamped papers. Here's what I don't understand, I said slowly. Why do you need my signature if Adrian's handling everything? Well, certain accounts require spousal authorization, legal formality, nothing significant. But significant enough to require my signature. Technically, yes. So my role is to sign things without understanding them, while you and Adrian make the actual decisions. Her smile tightened. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. She set down her glass with more force than necessary. Keaton, I don't appreciate your tone. We're trying to help, and you're acting like we're the enemy. I'm acting like someone who's been excluded from decisions about his own finances. Because that's exactly what's happened. You've never cared about this stuff before. You've always been happy to let us handle it. Happy or silent? There's a difference. Brielle's expression hardened. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You make decisions. You inform me afterward. You expect my signature without explanation. And when I ask questions, you treat me like I'm too simple to understand the answer. That's not fair, isn't it? At dinner last month, you told me financial decisions were for adults. What did you think that meant? She had the grace to look uncomfortable for half a second before recovering. I was speaking generally, about the complexity of the situation. You were speaking specifically, about me, about my place in this family structure you're so eager to streamline. You're being dramatic. I'm being clear, for the first time in a long time. I stood up. Send me the documents. All of them. Every authorization, every account statement, every trust document that bears my name. I'll review them professionally and then we'll have another conversation. Where are you going? I have another appointment. Her eyes narrowed. What appointment? An adult one. I left her sitting there, her cocktail untouched, her confidence finally showing its first real cracks. The parking garage was empty when I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine, watching the concrete pillars cast long shadows under the fluorescent lights. My phone sat on the dashboard silent. Then it rang. Mr. Marin, this is Marin Holt. I've reviewed the preliminary information you sent. We should meet tomorrow. There are some concerning patterns we need to discuss. I closed my eyes and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even frustration, just clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending everything is fine and start seeing things exactly as they are. Tomorrow works, I said. Good. And Mr. Marin, don't sign anything else. Not until we've had a chance to talk. Understood. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through streets I'd driven 1,000 times. When I finally pulled into our driveway, Leora's car was already there, lights on in the kitchen. She was making tea when I walked in. Brielle called, she said without turning around. She said you were rude to her. I asked questions. She said you accused her of lying. I asked for documentation. Leora finally looked at me. Why are you doing this? Everything was fine. Was it? Yes. We had a system. It worked. Everyone was happy. Everyone except me. She set down her mug hard enough that tea sloshed over the rim. So what? You're going to blow up the entire family over hurt feelings. I'm going to stop letting people make decisions about my life without my knowledge. If that blows up the family, maybe the family was built on something that deserved to collapse. That's easy for you to say. Brielle is my sister. And I'm your husband. When did that stop mattering? She didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the conversations we'd never had, all the times she'd chosen her sister's comfort over my dignity. I'm going to bed, she finally said. I stayed in the kitchen long after she'd gone upstairs, drinking cold coffee and thinking about the difference between peace and capitulation. The cafe booth was tucked into the back corner, away from the windows and the foot traffic. Finfeld arrived exactly on time, carrying a leather portfolio that looked older than both of us. He'd been the family accountant for 6 years, brought in by Adrian initially, but professional enough to stay neutral when family dynamics got messy. Thanks for meeting me, I said as he slid into the booth. He nodded, ordering black coffee when the waiter appeared. Your email was vague. What's this about? I need to understand the actual structure. Not what Brielle says it is, what it legally is. Finn studied me for a moment, then opened his portfolio. How detailed do you want to get? Everything. For the next hour, he walked me through accounts I'd never been told about, trusts established in my name without my knowledge, and financial decisions that required spousal consent, but had somehow moved forward anyway. He was careful, methodical, laying out the facts without editorial comment. Here's what concerns me professionally, he said finally. Some of these authorizations reference your signature on documents I've never seen you sign. Could they be forged? I'm not saying that. I'm saying I've never witnessed them, which is unusual given my role. As the family accountant, I'm typically present for major document signings. These 17 files show your signature, but I have no record of authentication. I leaned back. What would happen if I requested a full audit? Of what specifically? Everything. Every account. Every authorization. Every transfer made in the last 5 years. Finn was quiet for a long moment. That would be thorough. Would it be justified? Based on what I'm seeing? Yes. And Keaton, there's something else. He pulled out another sheet. 3 months ago, a significant transfer was made from an account in your name. The authorization has your signature. Do you remember signing it? I looked at the document. The signature resembled mine, but the date was from a weekend Leora and I had been out of state for her cousin's wedding. I was in Nevada that day, I said. Finn made a note. That's what I thought. How much was transferred? $240,000. The number hung in the air between us. Where did it go? An investment account managed by Adrian, high-risk commercial real estate venture. And if it fails? The loss would be attributed to the account of origin, which is registered in your name. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about being dismissed or underestimated. This was about being used. My name, my signature, my financial liability, all being leveraged without my knowledge or consent. I want that audit, I said. As comprehensive as possible. I'll start immediately, but Keaton, you need to understand what this will do. An audit of this scope will expose everything. If there are irregularities, they'll become official record. There's no putting that back in the box. Good. 2 days later, I sat across from Marin Holt in her law firm's conference room. The walls were lined with legal texts, and the table was empty except for a single notepad and her fountain pen. I've reviewed the materials you provided, she said. You have structural leverage here. More than I initially thought. Explain. She did. For 90 minutes, she outlined the legal framework, the points of vulnerability, the procedural options available. She never once suggested anything improper. Everything she described was lawful, documented, and devastatingly effective. The key, she said, is that you've been underestimated. They've made decisions assuming you'll never push back. That assumption creates exposure. What kind of exposure? Financial, legal, and reputational. If Noah's audit confirms unauthorized use of your signature, we can file for immediate freeze of all joint accounts pending investigation. We can demand full disclosure of every transaction made in your name, and if forgery is confirmed, we can pursue both civil and criminal remedies. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. Sometimes those are the same thing. She leaned forward. Here's what I recommend. Let Finn complete his audit quietly. Meanwhile, I'll file preliminary injunctions that won't be executed unless necessary. We build the case without announcing it. Then, when they try to formalize their oversight structure, we have all the documentation ready. Exactly. They'll walk into a meeting expecting your signature, and instead they'll get a legal wall they can't climb. When can we start? We already have. I filed the initial requests this morning. Quietly. They won't know until it matters. I drove home in silence, thinking about how power worked. Brielle had always believed it came from volume, from commanding rooms and making pronouncements. But real power was quieter. It lived in timestamps and notarized documents and compliance requirements. That night, Leora asked if I was upset about something. No, I said. You've been distant. Just thinking. She didn't push. She'd stopped pushing a long time ago. My phone buzzed. An email from Brielle. Subject, family meeting. Next Friday. Body. Adrian and I are convening a final family meeting to formalize our oversight structure. Please confirm your attendance. This is important. We need everyone's signature to move forward with the new trust arrangements. Time is of the essence. I forwarded it to Marin without comment. Her reply came back in under a minute. Perfect timing. Let them think everything is proceeding normally. Don't confirm or deny. Just stay silent. I smiled at that. Silence. The very thing they'd always demanded from me would now be the thing that trapped them. The bank branch meeting room was deliberately neutral. Beige walls, corporate art, a table that could seat 8 but felt empty with just 3 of us. Julian Voss, the compliance officer, sat across from me with a folder I recognized from Marin's earlier descriptions. "Mr. Marin," he said, "I want to be clear about what we're discussing today. These are standard verification procedures, but given the accounts involved, we need to be thorough." "I understand." He opened the folder. "Can you confirm these signatures?" I reviewed each page carefully. Some were mine, others resembled mine but weren't. The differences were subtle, the angle of certain letters, the pressure points, the flow. A casual observer might miss them. I didn't. "These 3 are not my signatures," I said, marking them with a red pen Julian provided. "And these 4? I examined them more closely. "Also not mine." Julian made notes. "That's 7 documents bearing forged signatures, totaling over 800,000 in authorized transfers." The number should have shocked me. Instead, I felt only a kind of cold validation. I'd been right. All those moments of dismissal, all those casual exclusions, they'd been covering something concrete. "And you never authorized anyone to sign on your behalf for these specific transactions?" "Never." "I see." He closed the folder. "We'll need to investigate this further. In the meantime, I'm placing a hold on any new activity requiring your authorization. I'm also flagging all accounts where your signature appears on documents dated within the last 5 years. How long will the investigation take? Given the complexity, 2 weeks, maybe less if documentation is readily available. The family is having a meeting Friday to formalize a new oversight structure." Julian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "I would strongly recommend not signing anything at that meeting until our investigation concludes." "I don't plan to sign anything." "Good." Back in my home office, I reviewed the timeline one final time. Everything was positioned. Marin had filed the necessary requests. The bank had initiated its investigation. Finn had prepared his comprehensive audit. All that remained was Friday. But Brielle wasn't making it easy. The messages started Tuesday afternoon. First in the group chat, bright and cheerful. "So excited for Friday. This is going to streamline everything and make life easier for all of us." Then a private text to Leora. "Make sure Keaton understands how important this is. We need everyone unified." Wednesday brought a phone call I didn't answer, followed by a voicemail. "Keaton, it's Brielle. I know we had a tense conversation last week, but I want you to know we're doing this for the family, for you and Leora. Please come Friday with an open mind." Thursday morning, Adrian sent an email with subject line, "Urgent, review before Friday." The attachment was a 40-page document outlining the new trust structure. I forwarded it to Marin without opening it. Her response, "Don't read it. Don't engage. Let them think you're compliant." Thursday night, Leora knocked on my office door. "Are you coming to bed?" "Soon." "Keaton." She paused. "Brielle called. She's excited about Friday. She says it's going to bring clarity to everything." "I'm sure it will." "You're not upset about any of this, are you? The oversight structure, I mean? It's probably for the best. Less stress for us." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd chosen comfort over partnership so many times, she no longer remembered what it felt like to stand beside someone instead of behind them. "It'll be fine," I said. She lingered in the doorway. "You've been different lately. Distant. Are we okay? Are we? I don't know what that means. It means I've spent 5 years being told my opinions don't matter, my expertise is irrelevant, and my role is to sign papers and stay quiet. And the one person who should have stood beside me through that chose to stand with the people who were erasing me." Her face crumpled. "That's not fair." Brielle is my sister. She was trying to help. Help herself. You don't know that. I know exactly that, and soon everyone else will too. She left without another word. Friday morning, I dressed carefully. Professional but not formal. Navy suit, white shirt, no tie. I packed my leather portfolio with the documents I might need, though most of the important ones were already where they needed to be. Marin had confirmed her attendance as my legal counsel. Finn would be there in his capacity as family accountant. Julian had been invited to present the bank's preliminary findings. Brielle didn't know about any of them yet. I arrived at the meeting location 30 minutes early. It was a conference room in a professional building downtown, neutral territory Brielle had chosen to emphasize the formal nature of the discussion. The room had a long table, high-backed chairs, and windows overlooking the city. I selected my seat carefully, not at the head of the table where Brielle would certainly sit, but positioned where I could see everyone clearly. I placed my portfolio in front of me and waited. The others arrived in sequence. Adrian first, checking his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. Noah, carrying his familiar portfolio, gave me a small nod. Leora, looking nervous without understanding why, took the seat beside me, but didn't reach for my hand. And finally, Brielle, radiating confidence, already talking before she'd fully entered the room. Wonderful, everyone's here. Let's get started. Adrian has prepared a presentation on the new structure, and we just need everyone's signatures to formalize everything. This is really exciting, and I think you'll all see how much simpler this makes our lives. She moved to the head of the table, opened her laptop, and pulled up a presentation. Actually, I said quietly, I've invited a few additional participants. I hope that's acceptable. She froze mid-gesture. What? The door opened. Marin entered, followed by Julian. Brielle's smile remained fixed, but her eyes had gone sharp. Keaton, what is this? This, I said, is a family meeting. Shall we begin? The conference room fell into the kind of silence that precedes storms. Brielle stared at Marin and Julian like they were gatecrashers at a private party. Adrian finally looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from casual dismissal to something resembling alertness. I don't understand, Brielle said slowly. Who are these people? I remained seated, hands folded on the table in front of me. Marin Holt is my attorney, specializing in trust and estate law. Julian Voss is a compliance officer from the bank. They're here because this meeting involves legal and financial matters that require proper oversight. Your attorney? Brielle's voice climbed half an octave. Keaton, this is a family discussion. We don't need lawyers. Actually, Marin said, settling into a chair with practiced ease, given the nature of the authorizations under review, legal counsel is not only appropriate, but necessary. Adrian set down his phone. That alone told me he understood something had shifted. What authorizations? I opened my portfolio and removed the first document. Let's start with the trust restructuring you mentioned at dinner 3 months ago. The one you said was an adult decision that didn't require my input. That was handled properly. Adrian's attorneys reviewed everything. They did, but they reviewed documents that allegedly bore my signature. Documents I never signed. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. That's ridiculous, Brielle said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Of course you signed them. We wouldn't proceed without proper authorization. I slid 3 pages across the table to Julian. These are the signatures in question. I've already confirmed with the bank that they are not mine. Julian nodded. I can verify that our preliminary handwriting analysis supports Mr. Marin's statement. The signatures appear to be forgeries. We've identified 7 documents so far, with a combined total of over 800,000 in authorized transfers. Leora made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Finn was carefully not looking at anyone, his attention focused on his closed portfolio. This is absurd, Adrian said, speaking for the first time with force. If there's been an administrative error, we can correct it. There's no need for this theatrical production. An administrative error, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Marin leaned forward slightly. Mr. and Mrs. Torin, I think it would be beneficial for everyone if we reviewed the full scope of questionable authorizations. Noah, perhaps you could share your findings. Finn opened his portfolio with visible reluctance. I've conducted a comprehensive audit of all family accounts and trust structures for the past 5 years, at Mr. Marin's request and entirely within my professional obligations. Brielle's face had gone pale. You did what? My job, Finn said simply. I found 17 instances where Mr. Marin's authorization was claimed on documents he states he never signed. I also found 12 instances where marital assets were transferred or restructured without proper spousal consent documented in writing. That's not possible, Brielle said. We followed all the proper procedures. Adrian's team handles everything correctly. Did they? I asked. The question hung in the air, quiet and precise. Adrian finally moved, reaching for one of the documents Finn had laid out. His hand stopped halfway. If there were procedural irregularities, they were unintentional. We acted in the family's best interest. The family's best interest, I said. Or your best interest. Keaton. Leora's voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing? I looked at my wife. I'm speaking. Something I should have done a long time ago when you still might have listened. Marin pulled another folder from her briefcase. I've prepared a detailed timeline of financial decisions made over the past 5 years. Each one claimed Mr. Marin's participation or consent. Mr. Marin has provided sworn statements that he was either not informed of these decisions or was actively excluded from the discussion. This is a misunderstanding, Brielle said, but the command had drained from her voice. We always kept Keaton informed. He just never paid attention to the details. Did you? I opened my phone and pulled up the family group chat. Here's a message from you. 18 months ago. Adrian and I have finalized the property acquisition. Thanks for trusting us to handle the complicated stuff. I never agreed to that acquisition. I didn't even know about it until after the papers were filed. You never objected. Because you never asked. You announced. There's a difference. Julian cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Torin, the bank takes unauthorized use of client signatures very seriously. We're currently conducting a full investigation. If our findings confirm forgery, we're legally obligated to report this to the appropriate authorities. The word hung in the air like a blade. Authorities. Adrian's face had gone carefully blank, the expression of a man calculating exits. Now, wait just a moment. If there were signature discrepancies, they could easily be explained by administrative confusion. Assistance, document services, these things happen in complex financial operations. They do, I agreed. But they leave trails. Noah, what did you find regarding who actually submitted the documents in question? Finn turned several pages in his portfolio. In 14 of the 17 cases, the documents were submitted directly by Adrian Torin or someone using his account credentials. In the remaining 3, they were submitted by legal representatives hired and paid by the Torins. All submissions were made with notarized signatures purporting to be from Keaton Marin. Notarized, Marin emphasized, which means someone represented themselves as Mr. Marin in front of a notary public and signed legal documents under penalty of perjury. Silence. Brielle stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is an ambush. You invited us here under false pretenses to embarrass us. I invited you to a family meeting, I said calmly. You assumed it would be another opportunity to make decisions without my input and present me with papers to sign like a trained seal. That assumption was incorrect. Keaton, please. Leora's hand reached for mine, but I didn't take it. This is family. We can work this out privately. We don't need attorneys and bank officials making this adversarial. We needed them years ago, I said. Back when respect was something given freely instead of something I had to document and defend in a conference room. Marin placed another document on the table. This one was official, stamped, impossible to ignore. I've prepared a formal request for full disclosure of all financial activities involving Mr. Marin's name, signature, or assets. The bank will comply. So will any other institutions where similar irregularities may exist. We're also requesting a full forensic accounting of all family trusts. You can't do this, Brielle said, her voice shaking now. I already have. The requests were filed Wednesday. They're being processed as we speak. Adrian stood now, his chair scraping against the floor. If you pursue this, you'll tear the family apart. Everything we've built, all the financial structures, the trust relationships, you'll destroy it all. The family was torn apart the moment you decided I wasn't worth including in decisions about my own assets. I'm just making it official. Julian gathered his documents with professional efficiency. I'll need to report our preliminary findings to the Fraud Prevention Department. They'll contact both parties within 48 hours regarding next steps. Mr. Marin, your accounts are secure and have been frozen to prevent any additional unauthorized activity. Mr. and Mrs. Torren, I'd strongly recommend you retain legal counsel immediately. He stood. I'll send my full report by Monday. This meeting is concluded from the bank's perspective. He left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a verdict. Brielle sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed authority collapsing in real time. You've ruined everything. Over what? Hurt feelings? Bruised pride? Because I called you out for not understanding complex finance? Over forgery, I said, my voice level and cold. Over unauthorized use of my identity. Over systematic exclusion and dismissal. Over years of being treated like I was too simple to understand my own finances, while you and Adrian helped yourselves to assets that weren't yours to control. We were helping you. You were helping yourselves. And you got sloppy because you assumed I'd never notice, never care, never fight back. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted from defensive to genuinely worried. Brielle, we need to leave. Now. But Brielle wasn't done. She was staring at me like she'd never seen me before, like the person sitting across from her was a stranger wearing her brother-in-law's face. You're really doing this, after everything we've done for you and Leora, after we included you in family decisions, treated you like an equal. You never treated me like an equal. You treated me like an inconvenience you had to manage. Every family discussion was you telling me what had already been decided. Every financial decision was made in rooms I wasn't invited to. And every time I questioned anything, you reminded me that I wasn't smart enough, wasn't experienced enough, wasn't adult enough to have an opinion. I stood, closing my portfolio with deliberate care. Well, I have an opinion now. And it comes with documentation, legal representation, and bank investigations. The family meeting is adjourned. This isn't over, Brielle said, her voice cracking. Yes, I replied. It is. Finn stood, gathering his materials. He paused beside my chair. I'll have the complete audit report ready by Monday. It's thorough, comprehensive. Every transaction, every authorization, every discrepancy documented with timestamps and source materials. Thank you, Noah. He nodded and left. Marin was the last to stand. She placed a business card on the table in front of Brielle. You'll want to contact your attorney. What's coming next will require experienced legal counsel. And Mrs. Torren, Brielle, I'd suggest you prepare for some very difficult conversations with your husband about his business practices. She left. The door closed. Only Leora, Brielle, Adrian, and I remained. The silence was absolute. Outside, the city continued its rhythms, cars moving through streets, people living their lives unaware that in this conference room, a family structure built on assumptions and dismissal had just collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. Brielle's hands were shaking. Adrian had gone pale, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline, and Leora sat beside me, tears streaming down her face, finally understanding what her silence had cost. "Keaton," she whispered, "please, we can fix this." "No," I said, "we can't, because fixing it would require admitting it was broken, and none of you were willing to do that when it mattered." I picked up my portfolio and walked to the door. My hand was on the handle when Brielle finally spoke. "You'll regret this. When the lawyers get involved, when everything becomes public, when the family is destroyed, you'll wish you'd stayed quiet." I turned back to look at her. "I've spent 5 years staying quiet, and all it taught you was that my silence had no consequences. Consider this my final lesson. It does." I walked out. The elevator doors closed on Brielle's face, on Adrian's worry, on Leora's tears, and I felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of documents finally speaking louder than dismissal.